Welcome back to the Anti-Loudness Club, where each morning while I get things set up at the studio, I'm talking mixing, mastering, and running a space that serves around 1,000 projects a year. Now today I'm going to talk to you about how I saved up for my first analog mastering chain, and that invoice is from back in 2013 or 2014. We're going to talk about that. We're going to extract some really solid lessons and practices that I still use today when it comes to saving money for gear, as well as choosing which gear to purchase and how I purchase it. Before we jump into that, I want to let you know we're just a couple weeks away from releasing Studio Flow. That's the ultimate toolkit for email, invoicing, and getting paid. It has all my templates there. I walk you through every little fine-tooth comb detail on the process of my communications with clients, especially via email. So if you do not want to miss out on early access pricing for that, make sure you head over to the newsletter, panoramamastering.com/newsletter, because I promise, even if the course isn't for you and you decide not to get that, the newsletter is the absolute best newsletter for working audio professionals. And now let's dive into today's episode. We're going to compartmentalize me getting my first analog mastering chain into two parts. How I got the money for it, so how did I build up funds for it? And number two, how I chose what to get. The second one's pretty embarrassing, but there's some good lessons there. Now, the first thing, funding. I bought it in I think it was in May 2013 I made the purchase. I'm going to put, for anybody on YouTube, a screenshot up here of the actual invoice with some critical information redacted. And it was a Manly Varimu and a JDK R24 EQ. And I got them combined for about 4,000 Australian dollars, which is around $2,500 to $3,000 US dollars. That's wildly cheap, even though it was a lot of money back then for me. How did I save up the money for that? So from 2011 to 2013, I was doing freelance work and I was working at a cafe. But the real distinct thing I want to just highlight here is that none of my part-time work at a cafe while I was studying funded anything I was doing in music. I made a vow to myself that if I were to purchase any equipment for my studio work or my career as a mixing engineer or producer, that investment had to be made directly from funds I earned providing those services. And the reason is, and I still do this to this day, if my business, quote unquote, at the time as a freelancer, if it could not earn enough money to purchase a piece of equipment, it did not deserve that piece of equipment. Because I could have easily just used the cash I was making my part-time work and any other cash I had to just steamroll and buy a whole bunch of gear. But then that business has just acquired all these assets it never earned income for, so it didn't deserve it. And the reason why I did this is it made me focus on providing valuable service that had people coming back through the door. So if people didn't like what I was doing, they weren't going to continue working with me, I wouldn't make enough money to purchase gear. If they enjoyed working with me, they'd come back to work with me and I'd have more work on my books to fill it up. Simple fundamentals there. Good work, return clients, more money, more gear. Bad work, no return clients, no money, no gear. I didn't allow any outside funds to sort of fuel me purchasing my gear. So that's the first fundamental. What sort of gigs was I doing while I was at uni? Well, I started doing editing, mixing, production, recording, you name it, I did it. Two little things. One of my favorite things to do was do DJ performances for the student union with my friend, because the student union at RMIT were cashed up and paid pretty damn good for the hour. Like, I'm talking really good. $250 back then for an hour set was primo for DJs without a name. So that was the first thing. The second thing when it came to building up a cash flow was that we had free access to the recording studios at the university. So what I would do is, I didn't feel it ethical necessarily to charge studio time for recording facilities which were given to me for free by the university. So what I did is I offered people I knew, other artists, other bands, other students, time to go, hey, let's book the studio, let's record a whole bunch of stuff. If you want, you can have all the files and you can mix it yourself. If you want, I'd love to mix it for you. So it was sort of almost like a lead magnet of me just recording for them and doing it for free off my own back. And then when they try and mix it themselves, they might not get to where they wanted to, or they might have just not wanted to deal with the mixing, and they would have hired me to do it. And that was a really good way to I think I did something like at least a recording session every second week for the last 2 years while I was in uni. So at least every second week I was in the recording studio recording something, and then maybe 50% of those ended up becoming mixing jobs. So that's how I was saving up cash to purchase my first analog mastering chain. Now, that's the whole funding side, okay? The philosophy behind it, if we're going to extract a few things, it's your business has to earn its investments. Okay, if it can't earn the cash for it, it doesn't deserve it. And to this day, I've not taken out a line of credit at the studio, and I pride myself on that, not as something to gloat about, but as something to say I haven't been focused on acquiring all the bells and whistles. My focus has been, and attention has been, on the service I provide to my clients and allowing that to drive the growth in my studio, rather than a line of credit that the studio never earned in the first place, and also putting myself under unnecessary pressure needing to pay back a debtor. So that's the first thing. Your business, your studio, as an engineer, you need to earn it to purchase it. If you don't, bad luck. The second thing to learn from there is to just be a bit innovative with the resources you have to generate cash flow. It's going to be pretty drip feedy at the start, but again, if you're in college, uni, you've got free access to studios, use that, record people for free, give them the files, be honest, don't sort of hold it over their head that they have to mix it with you. Go, hey, here are the files. If you want to mix it, great, be keen to hear it. If you want me to mix it, I'm here to help. So that's the funding side. Now we go to the purchasing side. Now, why did I pick the Manly Varimu and the JDK R24? I picked the Manly Varimu because I saw every other mastering studio had it, and I felt like it gave my mastering studio that I was going to open legitimacy. Whether that's true or not is completely another thing, but fortunately for me, a decade later, I still have that same unit here and I do use it. So it sort of paid off in that sense, in the fact that I actually really enjoy using it, even though I never used it before I purchased it. So that wasn't a good thing, but that's a reason why I bought it. I wanted to bring legitimacy to my space. The second one I bought was the JDK R24, and I bought that because I couldn't afford any other EQ at the time, because I blew my budget on the Varimu. So I got the JDK R24. That I don't use anymore. That's actually dust collecting on the floor over there, and I can't get rid of it because it's not that it's a bad EQ, it just wasn't suitable for mastering. It was really hard to get the left and right channel to track well, so I didn't take it. Now you're probably wondering, how did you get these two units for about $4,000 in total for both of them? Well, you never know unless you ask, okay? I'm a bit of a haggler. It's something I learned as a kid, watching my dad haggle salespeople in retail and electronics stores. It's something I enjoy doing. It's a bit of a challenge. Now as a business owner, I don't do it as much because, everybody's trying to eat, and I feel a little bit, not bad about it, but I sort of understand, for them to drop their price, somebody has to lose something off their plate to eat. You know what I mean? But, there's no harm in ever asking, what's the best deal you can do for this? Can we come to an agreement? Can we come to a middle ground? What happens if I get, all my cables from the store to recable the studio? You can figure out deals and ways to sort of manage coming to a middle price or sweetening the deal. Salespeople want to make sales. It looks good for them. You want to get a good deal. Everybody's in cahoots to make something happen. So it's always worth asking. There's no harm in asking. Always ask. Now, let's dial down to these two pieces of gear. I bought them and they were cool. They did what they needed to. The JDK I got rid of, but would I buy them again? In this day and age, in 2024, would I be buying an analog mastering chain? The answer is actually no. Do you know what I'd be buying? Another laptop, another computer. I spec it out every year if I could. I've got the M1 Max or Ultra laptop there, and I spec'd out the iMac when I got it. The most critical thing at the moment in my studio is the processing power of my technology, not necessarily the analog gear. The monitoring's pretty good, so I don't need to upgrade that. Where would I be spending money now is definitely in processing power, because your efficiency is key. Give you an example. I got rid of the JDK and I bought a Crane Song Ibis probably 2 years later. That's quite an expensive piece as well. I got the Crane Song Ibis because the JDK was a real pain to work with mastering. After I got the Crane Song Ibis, it was good, but then I just didn't enjoy going through the left and right channel and matching left and right, doing all the settings. So I commissioned the Barry Porter Net EQ I have because everything's stereo matched on one knob, on one face, which made it super quick and easy for me to use. So what I'm trying to say here is I wouldn't invest in analog gear, period. Moving forward, if I was starting now, I would focus purely on your technology capacity. So something I'm thinking of getting one of those stream decks to do macros in to help my workflow. I think that's a good investment. Headphones have been a great investment in terms of when I've been on the road. The Odyssey MM500s have served me so well. Laptop, stream deck, headphones. Those are really good investments I'd put more money towards, or I am putting more money towards in the future. And software services like Dropbox. I spend, I think, like $1,500 a year on Dropbox because I have 12 or 14 terabytes. How much is filled up there at the moment? I have a stupid amount of storage in my Dropbox. What are we up to now? We are up to 15 terabytes in my Dropbox, and I pay about $1,500 and a year. And like, those are the things I invest in now because those are the efficiencies and the bottlenecks of scaling and growing my work as an engineer, is mostly logistics and processing power, especially when it comes to mixers. Because at the moment, I've showed you some of those mixers where they're like upwards of 250 stems and we're doing heavy processing and lots of parallel, and by the end of it you've got 350 channels and it's ridiculously big sessions. My money's being spent on processing at the moment, so good laptops. I'm going to get a new computer when I'm in the new studio. And yeah, that's sort of me going through that process of buying my first analog chain and the decisions. Do I regret getting what I got? No, absolutely not. Am I happy I went through that process? Yes, I am. I learned a lot, and I hope you guys learned something too. So thanks for sticking along on this podcast episode, and until next time, take care.